Good evening, panel speakers. It's really great to have you all here this evening. Thank you all for taking the time out to be with us and to contribute to this conversation. I'd like us to start off by introducing ourselves. And maybe we can start with Leena. So could you share a bit about yourself and what interested you in participating in this panel today?
Sure. My name is Leena Pendharkar, and I have a short film called Awaken playing in the festival. Awaken is about a daughter caring for her mother with Alzheimer's. I've made many shorts and a couple of features. My last feature film was called 20 Weeks, and it deals with a couple that whose baby has a health condition at 20 weeks in utero. So I've dealt with some tough subjects. Awaken is no different. And I wanted to be on this panel because I think the discussion about challenges, mental health, mental illness in the South Asian community is a really compelling one. So I wanted to be able to participate in that discussion. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Jazz?
Hi, my name is Jazz Virk. Born in London, England. 1969, so I want to put that in there so you know where I'm coming from with the generations that have changed over the years. So that's key to know how I grew up there and here. And I have been a professional filmmaker for 30 years now, making commercials, many music videos. Most of my career was directing music videos in the English world, and then obviously in the Punjabi Bhangra world, moved to England for 10 years, worked in India, traveled the world. So I've experienced different, the South Asian groups from across Canada, the States, UK, and then India. And when I retired, 2015, I am now working on my 4th feature film. So back to back, I've been doing feature films that deal with South Asian subject matter in a genre. Instead of me just doing a PSA on the things I wanted to discuss about our culture, our traditions, our heritage, and let's say, the violence and all the atrocities that happen and the hypocrisy, I'll do it in a genre, and I've done genre films in the suspense, horror categories. And they're all, 2 are finished. And the short film that I did last year to take a break from the feature films dealt with trauma, mental health, my mental health, my addiction to alcohol, me coming clean, me dealing with bipolar. And this is like the closest thing to being honest about where I am. And that took 50 years to get there.
Thank you for sharing that, Jazz, and thank you for being here with us this evening.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Bobby?
Hi, my name is Bobby Dhillon. I am the founder of SubNet Toronto. We happen to be the largest South Asian networking group throughout Canada itself. And a lot of what I do is bringing South Asians together on different forefronts. And typically, it all started off as a professional group, but then what we ended up doing afterwards is we ended up getting ourselves involved into more societal-based discussions, societal-based, cultural-based discussions. So I think there's a lot more to the professional community, because I think that when it comes to mental health, well-being, should be something expressed among the professional community altogether. As we were snowballing and finding our way within the professional space, we came across many interesting discussions and many interesting causes that I think that the South Asian community needs to shed more spotlight on. And the big one being mental health, because mental health can correlate to many different things. As Jazz mentioned before, it can deal with, obviously, substance abuse. It can deal with, family. It can deal with, it could deal with status, society. It can deal with so many different things. Reputation is kind of the one that I always look at. And why is it such an important thing within the South Asian community? Why is it important for us to care about what other people think? And I think that it's important for you to be you. Break out of your shell, express yourself, and have the conversations that are worth having, because when you have these conversations, it will alleviate any inner pains that you're going through. And also, you will also create a community within your own circle, and you will be a part of these discussions that affect many others. A lot of the things that we consider to be taboo are nothing new. If you really think about it, it's nothing new. We're just not talking about it. So these are just certain things that I want people to break out of their shell. In terms of what I'm currently doing right now, I currently host a podcast called Mental Dominance. And mental dominance is, it talks about different, like what I like to do with mental dominance, I like to talk about different subjects within mental health. Like we talked about burnout, we talked about body shaming, we talked about, toxic relationships, and these happen a lot within the community altogether. And you can find me on Instagram, which is Bobby Empath. That's the one that I utilize for mental health. And lastly, I want to say, Jazz, I absolutely love your beard. You are what you call beard goals. So,
thank you.
yeah, I need to know what products you use. So like that.
I'll tell you later, but yeah, you got a good one going there. All right.
It's almost there. But anyways, that's me.
Raji.
Hey everyone, my name is Raji Aujla, as you can read in the Zoom meeting chat. So I work in Canadian arts. So I'm the president of Willendorf Cultural Planning, which is essentially a firm that helps arts institutions speak to, program for, and work with Indigenous as well as other BIPOC communities. And I also recently launched Newest, which is a magazine that kind of does the same thing, but amplifies the voices of these different communities that sometimes you don't really get to hear from in mainstream media. I also freelance for the Globe and Mail, and I am a godmother to my sister's twins. That's usually like my bio that I send to people, so I literally just read that. But ultimately, the reason why I was interested in this discussion is because I feel I have a safe rapport with you, Gursharan, so I feel comfortable being a part of something that you are programming. But I also feel that the arts does have a transformative power to help communities heal, build relationships, and create spaces of belonging. And that's something that is very important to me. So if I can lend my voice to that, that's something that I'm always happy to participate in. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for being here, Raji. Thank you. And Karan.
Hi. Yeah, so I've been making films for about 15 years, roughly. So kind of maybe half my life, I suppose.
Giving away your age there.
I've been making films. I don't want to say professionally. I've been making films for myself, and kind of as not really a hobby, but something that I'm passionate about. It's been a passion for 15 or so years, as long as I can remember picking up a camera and doing all that. I've recently moved from Leicester, England to Canada. So it's just been a year since I've been here. But it's awesome for being around such awesome people right now. Actually, I'll be honest with you. I mean, just like hearing everybody's bio being railed off, I'm like, this is awesome. So this is kind of a huge experience for me. This is my second film that's actually got into a festival. So I'm incredibly excited to be a part of this panel, and I'm so excited to share my film with the world, I guess now, which is weird to say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, that's a very short version of who I am.
Great. Okay. So actually, Karan, I'm gonna just pick off with you, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
And actually, my question, very similar phrasing to what you just said. Thank you for sharing your film with the world. I know that not just for you, but for Bobby and Jazz as well, to participate in this type of conversation is not always easy. And, sharing lived experiences, especially as South Asian men. What inspired you to share your story through film?
Good question. I've always been a huge kind of advocate of feeling like film is one of the best ways we can articulate our experiences as people, right? Thoughts, emotions, film, I guess to me is like one of the most impactful ways we can tell a story. And especially like you just mentioned it, is the idea of a South Asian male, let alone just a male talking about mental health openly was difficult to find. And over time, I've developed the confidence to talk about just not just mental health, but just the confidence to talk in front of a camera through hundreds of YouTube videos that I've made. But I wanted to talk about something important for a change. It's always been fun and lighthearted stuff, but over time I discovered that obviously anxiety, mental health, depression, everything is these things are such an important topic to talk about, but I never talked about them. It was always done through a fun lens and whatever. And when I make my videos on YouTube, my intention was always to make people feel lighter, happier even. And so the documentary was kind of an evolved, mature version of the videos that I'd made, and instead kind of focused on telling people that it was okay to suffer from mental health disorders, and it wasn't actually a disorder, like the name actually says, and like we hear every day. So the experiences, my own experiences, and hearing and talking to people, and slowly beginning to understand what it meant to have anxiety and suffer from low mood or whatever it is. I started to understand the importance of that, and I needed to communicate that in the only way I knew how, and that was through film.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Leena, a similar line of question here. I think for you, I really want to start off by saying thank you, Leena, for sharing this story about Alzheimer's through the lens of a caregiver. This is something that I've not seen within the South Asian community, but as a professional working in the field, I know that there are a number of elders that are suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and so on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for programming it. It's a hard topic, and I don't think a lot of people want to talk about it. So it's a challenge. It was a challenge to make, and I often make films that deal with challenging subjects around women's lives, and it's not always easy. So I appreciate the forum.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you? What was it about this story for you that needed to be told in this way?
Well, so, my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's, and my husband is mostly a caregiver. And of course, I'm supportive and I help and I do what I can. And my in-laws live within a couple miles of me in Los Angeles. And, I think the story was really inspired by this fleeting thought that I had one day where, my mother-in-law doesn't, in the short term, her memory is going, but she will suddenly tell these stories from her past in India. And, that just kind of struck me and it stayed with me. And I also had this thought of when you have a parent that has Alzheimer's, they're no longer the person that you knew. They eventually become a different person and somebody that you don't really recognize. And maybe they have some lucid moments in the beginning, they have lucid moments. And I thought, gosh, I wonder what it would be like to connect with what it would be like for my husband to reconnect with his mom for a day or for a moment. And that's really what it's about. It's just having that momentary connection. And I think I combine that with my own kind of feelings of being, just being an adult woman, and particularly being a South Asian adult woman, of this external success that she's kind of achieved, of having a great job and a beautiful home and a son and all these very external things, but she's ultimately just very, very alone. As a brown female, I think that's just a theme that seems to run with me a lot, that she's in her work isolated, that her husband and her family are not gelling the way she'd like, and her one support system that she had, who is her mother, is no longer there. So it's that's what really inspired it. It's just this moment of connection with her mother and support system. So yeah, I was really glad I could tell that story, and we've been playing it at some festivals, and sparked some good discussion. So
Okay, how has it been received by people that have watched it, or even people within the South Asian community?
It's interesting. I mean, I have had more screenings just sort of in the Asian American community, like CAM Media, San Francisco Asian Film Festival, Los Angeles. And I mean, it's been tough with COVID because all the screenings that normally I might have would have all been virtual. But I was surprised that the screenings that I've had in the Asian American community, the discussions afterwards have been really poignant, and people have really reached out to say like, hey, we don't talk about this enough, and we don't talk about what it means to be a caregiver and to have aging parents, and particularly in an immigrant community where when you lose a parent or your parent gets sick, you lose that connection to your culture in a way, and that's something that we just don't really talk about. And I haven't been programmed at that many South Asian film festivals, to be honest. I had one festival that said, we just couldn't find a spot for you, because I just don't think people want to talk about subjects like this. I just really feel that, and it is very challenging, and I get it. But I was lucky that Parminder Nagra agreed to play the lead in the film. So she's just such a brilliant actress, and I'm happy that she was a part of it. So I'm sure it'll continue to play in different places.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I already know that the story, and especially the caregiver lens, will resonate with many people in the community, the South Asian community. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to come back to Jazz. You mentioned when you were introducing yourself that you've been on your own journey of recovery. Could you share a bit about that with us, and maybe what's been helpful, what hasn't been very helpful along that journey for you?
Okay, so being Punjabi background, obviously Punjabi Sikh, growing up in England, and if you know the culture of the drink, it is ingrained, it's part of the culture, and it's everything. So I grew up with alcohol, not thinking it was a dysfunctional thing or anything like that, but looking back, it was always an escape to deal with issues. Like, for example, being a filmmaker, geez, forget about other traumas, like just wanting to become a filmmaker was very hard for anybody, for my parents to understand. So when are you going to grow up? When are you going to get a real job? All that, because I gave up a teaching job many years ago to pursue this full time. And just having domestic arguments, just the typical Indian, arguments and this and that's how I grew up. And the way to numb that was to drink with my buddies, drink there, but never drink at home. So push came to shove, and I had to deal with, going to see a doctor because I just was drinking and just, depressed. Didn't know how depressed I was. And then I got diagnosed with bipolar, and that was shocking. And then I took change, and luckily my brother joined me in the battle to quit drinking. He goes, let's do this together, right? So, and my sister-in-law, who has a blog and a website, Making the World Smaller, we all decided to go on this therapy route and not hide, because my group of friends disappeared. As soon as I said I'm on a path to get help, and I went across the board from starting with LinkedIn, CBT, and then even did some work with CAMH for the drinking and driving, right? Typical thing in Mississauga and Brampton. And then after that, I just kept on going. I just kept on taking the therapy because it kept me away from the alcohol, right? And dealing with bipolar. And then I realized I'm not alone. And there's a counselor here in Brampton, a South Asian counselor that helps people. And he said to me, he goes, you know what? It's the arrogance of our community culture about the drink. If you don't drink, you're not a man. It's as simple as that. And he goes, it is difficult to break that stigma because there's this, there's always been this push about just drink, forget about drugs and abuse and domestic violence, right? So I go, let me take my first step. And I took my step. My brother joined me. My friends left me, all of them, because they go, stay away from our wives. If they get wind of that you're getting all, help and sobering up, you're going to ruin my life. That's exactly what these friends said. So now my circle of friends are so new and tiny, and they don't drink. So the ones that stayed, and you know how small that circle is? It's tiny. But my brother's a lawyer, so he knows about the drinking and the violence and the domestic stuff. And so I made a film about that. And it wasn't like a direct film. Hi, my name is Jazz, but it's a suspense crime thriller that actually happened to me with a schizophrenic who pulled a knife on me at the library, out of all the places where I was writing my next script for another film. He pulled a knife on me. And whatever transpired in that 30 minutes, I did it for verbatim. I couldn't tell the story without people saying, you just got to shoot the film. They go, just shoot the film, verbatim. So the easiest script to ever write, just from the beginning to the end. And obviously I changed the characters, the location. I had to make it feasible. I'm not James Cameron. And so that film I finished. Now, I'm not sure if you got a chance to see that. Did you see it yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No,
So
no.
I sent it to IFFSA, and we're doing the sound mix. I sent it quickly. I had no idea that I was going to be running it because I was preparing my feature film. Yeah. And so, so that film, and I look at that film, I'm like, wow, oh boy, that's pretty honest. And so I talk about these things, but from a entertaining point of view, right? From a thriller point of view, and along with all the short films and feature films I've done, all my personal experiences and things that I want to change in our communities and express, it's underlining theme. It's like read between the lines. So I make horror films with blood and gore and all these wonderful things, to the point Sonny Gill goes, Jazz, I can barely watch your films. He goes, this is like a family event. I go, well, this is what I do. And it's a genre. So you go in watching a genre. So the non-South Asians can enjoy it as a horror film or a thriller. And our South Asian people, if they want to watch my films, they can see the underlying themes that I deal with. And I deal with the themes like I don't hold back. I do not hold back in about the abuse to women, all the things that we hear in our communities across the world. And this was because, I just got to deal with it. And I'm talking about Alzheimer's. My dad has dementia, and dealing with that, I moved back home from England. I lived in Birmingham working on music videos and stuff. And I left my production company in the UK to come back to take care of my family and get a chance to see them. And so that's been a journey for my mother more than anybody. And so I also did a film about that, and I called that short film Rewind. It's about memory and how we want to hold on to stuff. What would we do to hold on? And so that's another short film that I forgot that I made.
What role have these films, and the one that you've talked about in particular, the one from last year?
It's called A Haunted Addict.
The Haunted Addict. So what, if any, role did making that film play in your healing and your recovery?
Well, you know what? Coming to terms and talking about it with friends and family is one thing, but to make a short film, it's a feature, it's 30 minutes long, to actually literally, go, all right, this is, they're going to say, Jazz, this is not your typical thing. This, this is a very different film. And that was key. And it helped because if you're going to go through this process of therapy and help, you got to start. And luckily I'm a filmmaker. I'm in the public eye. I'm in media. So why would I not want to help other people understand that, we're not alone, and it's okay to deal with and talk about it. Talking about bipolar, depression, and alcohol openly, we need that. You have no idea how badly we need that as the men in my community who are just nuts about it. They won't talk about it. They don't have a problem.
Bobby, did you have anything to add to what Jazz is saying about South Asian men and conversations about mental health, vulnerability, and being open about mental health.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Bobby. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure, but Jazz, I'm not sure if Jazz wants to finish.
No, I'm good.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, when it comes to men and mental health, I think we need to be a little more honest with the community altogether. Actually, Jazz said something that you really nailed it on the head when you said this. When you said that when you were seeking help, your friends were starting to disappear. And I just think that's a very valid statement that you made, because when you want to grow, you have to leave some people behind. And I'm a firm believer of that, is that now the conversations that I want to have are the conversations that I want to grow, or the people that I want to connect with, or the people that I want to grow with and improve. A lot of the friends that I've had back in high school, like whenever we get together, we're still friends, but it's not a case where I'm actually dying to see them. Like, we're in COVID right now, but I'm not going to be FaceTiming them because I just don't know what to talk about anymore. I can't grow with these individuals anymore because I have to, find what's going to help me as an individual. But that's beyond the point what I'm trying to say. But in terms of having the honest conversation, extremely, extremely important. And I just think that we need to kind of be a little more upfront about being, of actually having a good identity of what we want to do and what we want to become versus what other people want us to become. For example, if I had a nickel of how many times people went to school, they went to med school to become a doctor, but didn't come out and become a doctor. That happens a lot. And, if people want to pursue their dream, whether it's a filmmaker or an artist or whatnot, these are passion-based occupations that where people are going to grow with. And so that's kind of being a little more open about the whole topic altogether. But when it comes to men specifically, it's funny to know about how many men do not want to have the conversation. They want to, but they don't know what to do. It's funny. Actually, no, it's not funny. I shouldn't say that. But whenever I'm doing my little snippets on Bobby Empath, I get approached by a lot of men. Men DM me. Men contact me because I'm another man who's talking about mental health, and they feel that they could connect. And I think one topic that is kind of common, and I don't know what it is a topic of heartbreak. Men who are in a relationship and are either divorced or going through a divorce, or they've been dumped by a lover, they're going through a heartbreak, and of course, what do they do to numb themselves? They drink. Or they try to find things to do to keep their mind off of things, but it's a temporary solution. But they're not making the right step. They're not taking the right step necessary for them to get over things and to get over the hump. See, when it comes to drinking and stimulants, these are short-term solutions. It's not even a solution. It's just a short-term fix. It's not even a remedy. So you have to find a path on giving you that long-term remedy and having yourself to recover from something. I'm pretty sure we might have all been through that. I've been through certain situations where I had to, find the long-term solution on something. And it's not an easy road to take, but drinking is an easy road at the end of the day. There's a saying goes where, and it's something, have you ever been to a family party where men are on one side and the women on the other? And the men are drinking and they're eating chicken or whatever it might be.
It sounds like a very traditional South Asian gathering. Yeah,
it is. It's always exactly. It's always the man who doesn't want to drink ends up getting the most hammered at the end of the night. Why? Because he's pressured. He's pressured into drinking. And that's exactly what Jazz was saying before, is that because it comes a level of, oh yeah, you're not man enough to drink. Come on. Or, hey, I'm driving tonight. That's okay. Just sober up afterwards or whatever it might be. These are just bad behaviors that we need to stop doing when we become a man. But then again, when we become a man, we're not doing man-based things. We're still acting like, we're in high school. You have one person who's trying to be the bully, trying to be the tough guy, trying to, do the whole peer pressure thing. I'm not saying that's a South Asian thing, but it happens a lot within our community. Why? Just accept no. You don't have to drink to have a good time.
Mm.
So, and so that's just something else that comes about as well. So these are just certain topics when it comes to being a South Asian man.
Yeah.
Other things that come about as well is, I'm just want to speak a little openly and freely is that I'm actually a cancer survivor, and it really, really messed with my health. And when you go through these kind of things, and whenever you want to be honest, your family's telling you to do this, don't tell anybody. It happened when I was single. Don't let this out, because if someone was to find out about your medical history, then you're going to be tainted. You're going to be, no one's going to want to marry you. No one's going to, you have to be this perfect individual for someone. And so that's another case that comes about with South Asian men. I want to tell you I don't want to take too much time, but I want to tell you a personal story about me and about being the South Asian man and dealing with mental health. When I got married, I spent a month at home after I got married. And then then after spending a month at home, I found a job which was a high pay rate closer to my wife's family. I ended up living with my wife's parents for 3 years.
Me too.
And imagine, yeah, and imagine going through that. Imagine going through that as a South Asian man, that you need to be the man, you need to bring the wife home. And then ever since then, my wife has been a little estranged by people within my family. Now I keep her away and protect her and kind of say, okay, fine, we don't need to go to certain events if you're not wanted. And I guess this is not really this is not a heartbreaking thing, but but I understand. But to this very day, my wife does not want to change her last name because the people who have the same last name as her don't respect her. So she's saying, why would I want to do this? As a man, I want to align with that, be equal with that, and understand that. So that's my story.
I lived with my in-laws for 6 months. My wife couldn't hack it here. I didn't know I had a dysfunctional family until my wife moved in. And then when I moved in with her family, moink, where's the screaming and yelling?
Honestly, I'm like, right? Like, where? I went through the exact same thing, Jack.
Oh my God,
I
my
don't
parents.
change my name either, even though I've been married for 20 years.
Yeah.
I just don't believe in it because I think that South Asian women, like our mom's generation, they're asked to change their first name, their last name, move, their identity is completely taken from them. And so for me, I just said, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not taking my own identity away from, not that your name is everything, but I just felt very strongly about that like, I just choose not to change my name because I don't think it's just symbolic for me of all the things, the patriarchal society and patriarchy in South Asian communities. And I really dislike that. So that's like been a thing for me too.
100%.
Thank you for sharing the other side, Leena.
Sorry, I had to just jump in and cut off the discussion about the families. But no, I feel it's hard because I have 2 daughters now, and their middle name is my last name, and then their last name is my husband's name, which is fine and it works. But it is, there have been times when I've thought, gosh, I should change my name because it is, I want to have the same last name as my daughters. But then again, I also just don't like that system. It just doesn't work for me. And in Los Angeles, there are plenty of women who don't change their names. So yeah.
Raji, did you have anything to add?
I mean, not from the men's perspective at all. I mean, definitely break this system of patriarchy down. I'm with you, Leena. But I suppose the closest the proximity I can share with the men on this panel is that my brother is diagnosed with schizophrenia, and caring for a loved one was by far the hardest experience of my life. In fact, many times I even just wanted to give up on him. And I think that, to Bobby's point, there's a period when everything's just hush hush, like don't speak about this, like very problematic behavior. It's going to ruin our reputation and whatever else. And then it gets so bad and untreated that then when a family, especially an immigrant community that doesn't have a good command of the English language, are going to try to get a diagnosis, then, there's barrier upon barrier just to get into like a mental health, not only just education, but, a system of care. So I had to intervene the first time when my brother tried to kill my dad a few years ago. And it's the hardest thing in the world to be sitting on this side of the country while your parents are out in the West Coast, and to have a phone call like that while you're at your office and all is well in your life here that you've created and fought for, because life back at home was such a shit show. But then to now go back and love, like care for a loved one that is almost a stranger to me because of, you know, his behavior. Yeah, it was a complete and utter challenge. And I think that I never associated substance abuse with the mental health, but I certainly saw, in terms of the alcohol and its association with your manhood or whatever that machismo thing could be.
Mhm.
But I found with my brother, you know, he was a professional boxer. He had a horrible heartbreak, was, you know, smoking weed at a very young age. And there was just so much that was lending itself to this diagnosis. But I think now that a few years have passed since his diagnosis, my biggest association and empathy towards him is that our families, especially, and I can speak on behalf of South Asian families that are from Punjab and, you know, Sikh and of a certain caste or something, there's so much at play here. And I found that on one hand, observing him as the only son, he had all sorts of affordances in our upbringing. He can go out, we couldn't. He can, you know, do boxing or whatever he really wanted to do, go and party, whatever it was, he was afforded to do that and we weren't. But having said that, when he would come home, he was babied like crazy. Everything was done for him. His laundry was done for him. And so when you're raising a son to be a man and make choice and have agency and be a successful man, but then you're coming home and being babied, I think that that would seriously F with you. And I see that a lot now with other people, and I'm just like, don't do that. Like, if you're going to have children and that's a responsibility, you have to raise your children with the lens of equity and, you know, equality and all the other things. And then if you want your child to perform a certain way, you have to build the systems and the conditions for that person to be able to achieve and succeed in their personal lives without you. And so I think that as a loved one, as a byproduct of my brother's diagnoses, those have been my observations. But as a girl being in that's like a whole different conversation, you know. And we often don't get the love that we need and the support that we need, that, you know, I guess it's almost like we have to become the men of the family because, you know, like, he's not getting help himself. My parents are knocking on the doors of law enforcement, penitentiaries, trying to find my brother who's been arrested, and then, you know, taken to the hospital. And suddenly we have to man up and get him the help he needs. So I feel like women, our voices are constantly silenced because of the patriarchy, but then our voices are even more repressed, you know, caring for the patriarchy almost. I don't know if that makes sense. So that's been a bit of my experience with some of the things that y'all have shared. And thank you all for sharing such things too. Yeah.
Well stated, for sure.
Yeah. Karan, did you have anything to add to this topic?
I mean,
I'm sorry. I have to take off. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you so much, Leena.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Take care, Leena.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that everyone's just said. I mean, like, it's so interesting to see the different perspectives that we have here, and especially from what Raji said, like, I can't imagine that amount of pressure that the other side have to deal with. And you don't think about that really. Like, growing up, I understand exactly what you're saying, because it's interesting. Like, when I saw a counselor a couple of years ago, one of the things she said was, you know, a lot of the trauma, and this is kind of standard for many people, where the trauma begins from obviously your childhood, and it's based on obviously the way you're brought up. And it's it's not our parents' fault, obviously. Like, they don't know any better. Like, that's just what they've learnt. And my mom, bless her heart, I love her to bits, and she's the most wonderful woman in the world. But, like, the way a man should do this, and men should have to care for their family and they have to provide and do all this, and when you grew up I thought you were going to look after me, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I don't know, I everything combined with that and everything that we see from media and speaking to people, it's like growing up you don't understand what a man is. Like, I still, to this day, I'm 32 and I still don't know what a man is. I don't even understand what that word means anymore. And I think every day is such, it's an education, isn't it? Like, I'm still trying to figure out what my role in this world actually is. What is my job as a husband? What is my job as a son, as a brother? Like, I don't know. And, growing up and thinking that these things were, 100% correct, that a man should have to be the provider and the protector and all this other stuff. I don't know what, what I mean? I don't know what else to believe. And it's only now in my last, probably the last 5 years that I've really only come out of that mindset, which is crazy to believe that, just 5 years ago, I was in this mindset where I thought a man was the protector, the provider, couldn't show emotions, couldn't have anxiety, couldn't, and hearing your guys' stories is awesome. And it's just it's so refreshing to hear these different takes and different perspectives on, what a man is or isn't, and it's especially, sorry, I went on a bit.
No, this is a really important conversation. I think one of the things I'm hearing from all of you is this constant renegotiating of identities, and how we do that, what resources we have available to us to do that, how that impacts our mental health, and the different tools that we might need along the way to make that happen. There's just so many layers to everything that you've all talked about. Thank you all so much for being so open and vulnerable. I'm kind of wowed right now.
I feel though, to Karen, I feel like a little bit to Karen's point is, I wish we could imagine ourselves without assigning gender roles to our sex. And I know that sounds so idealistic, but I mean, do we really actually even need to define what it means to be a man? Right. Like, I mean, I feel like a man more than I feel like a woman. What does that mean? Not much at the end of it. And I think there's a lot of research that we can do and a lot of literature that is available, especially from the First Nations and the lands that we live on, where gender roles weren't even really much a consideration for the construct of society. And I think that those are some of the things that we can help ourselves with as we are going through these negotiations, as you said, Gursharan. And I wish that was, something that was more feasible and not so idealistic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People are too scared of change. And if you have your circle of friends that do the same thing and talk the same way, how many times have I been in a circle and the person that you marry, that you love the most, is the person that gets the verbal bashing when the guys are together drinking. It's like, what are you saying? I go, this is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, and she's the ball breaker? So that's the kind of stuff that you hear all the time, and you got to break that. Like, that is one thing, because at the end of the day, it's your brother, your sister, your wife, your husband. Your friends are not going to be there when you need them. And drinking is a sign of depression. That drinking every day, having a pint, you know what, marketing, LCBO, the beer store, marketing a glass of wine with your meal and having a beer on the beach, all that stuff. If you go into a beer store, go to a convenience store, look at the labels of cigarette packs, okay? They've got them locked, chained. You have to like open and, marketing, and nobody sponsors it. Cigarettes are bad. Go to a beer store, not a single sign saying all the problems alcohol is going to cause. Maybe one sign saying don't drink when you're pregnant. That's it. So look at the government is making so much money from going, you know what? Let them just drink and we'll market it that way. Now, look at that. Go. And that way, the liquor store shocked me. I'm going, this is where I spent every other day for a lot of time. and there was no signs, there's no pictures. Look at wine bottles, there's no warning. Cigarette packs, warnings galore. And my films, if you see the way I'm talking, like I'm restraining to keep the PG-13 in here, is just the way these people, you know what, there's one thing, hold on, I'm gonna whisper it to you guys. My parents don't know I have bipolarism. I haven't told them for the same reason that Bobby said. They go, if anybody finds out, my dad had 5-6 strokes, my mom goes, don't tell anybody. You got to change that. And I'm doing it through my films, and I'm talking about it, and I'm going to speak loud, and I'm going to speak the loudest, and I'm going to get in trouble for speaking that loud, but we got to change this. You know, we need to. I didn't know that I could live without alcohol. I had no idea that I could have a good time.
Maybe even a better time. You seem like you're like super living large. And
well, you know what? Alcohol and music was a thing. So if I have my alcohol, I could like my music. So you can see my speakers. I got a home theater, and I go, well, you take the alcohol away, how am I going to have fun? So I have a Alexa in my washroom, in my shower. I have more fun with the endorphins from just music. I'm 17 months sober, 17 months sober. And thank you. And the good thing is my brothers joined me.
Yeah.
And a couple of other friends of mine have joined me. My friends have joined me, and the other ones have left me. So either you're going to join and go, you know what? My wife and I are, you know, discussing this. I go, come, you know, I go, we can ask anybody, ask the Punjabi guys, you know, if they've gone for a coffee. If you're from Surrey or, you know, Mississauga or Brampton, ask anybody if they've been inside of Tim Hortons. Probably not.
Yeah, there's definitely alcohol has a it's in the fabric of our community, and I think it kind of stems back to, you know, Punjab and like our histories and India and colonialism. I think there's, you know, that's a whole other conversation. I want to just pick up on stigma and discrimination within our communities, within our families. Actually, you've each kind of touched on that within our social circles, which is interesting to me. You know, when I think of the recovery model, our social supports, you know, is one of the pillars of that. And you've each kind of talked about the role of social supports and family supports in kind of different ways. One of the goals of this segment in the festival, when, you know, we started this a few years ago, is to use film as a way to reduce the stigma, to have more meaningful, more open dialogues as we are having today. Raji, I want to come to you here, because you shared in your bio that you really believe about the value in this, how the arts and film play a role in healing and can be really transformative. Could you share a bit more about that and some of your experiences, whether it's with Indigenous communities? Because I think we have a lot to learn kind of as a South Asian community moving forward. And I think that there's just so much value in maybe what we can kind of learn from Indigenous communities as well.
Well, I think, I mean, genuinely believe that arts can have a transformative power of how people create spaces of belonging, but also learn of other people around the world. So there's like, you know, an element of love and just oneness that comes of artistic expression. But I want to wheel this back, because I think that's a great question, and I wanted to just give a little bit of perspective from a woman's side of how arts shapes our perspective. And it stems from, in my case, you know, being brought up in an immigrant household and very patriarchal household in rural British Columbia, where, you know, you're just kind of surrounded by white people all the time. And I remember having just a very skewed influence into the arts. Like my entry point was skewed. So, you know, my parents kind of censored what we could and could not do, and much of what they tried to do, and God bless them, like I get their logic in this, was like holding on to South Asian art specifically, whether that was Bollywood film or our scriptures, like our Sikh scriptures that we grew up like reading and understanding the poetry of that. And while all that's good, that's disassociating you from the lands that you're currently on. So, you know, my knowledge of Indigenous culture was so limited. My, on one hand, I'm being held so tightly to a Punjabi regimented lifestyle, but then when I go to school, I'm being asked to assimilate. So what that does, I mean, on one hand, it's very problematic to your own sense of self and identity and confidence, but then, you know, what you're being exposed to is the other element of that is problematic. So for me, watching a Bollywood film in the 80s, or I suppose the 90s, you know, that's complete SHIT show, you know, like it was horrible. Like you're watching films that depict, you know, gender issues, perpetuate discrimination and caste issues, rape culture. I mean, like, do you remember in the 90s, like you couldn't see consensual kissing, but you would have like a 20-minute rape scene depicted on film. Like, I think as a woman, those are really big things that you got to unpack as you grow older. And, you know, for me, contrary to Jazz, like moving to Toronto and cultivating my own life here that was healthy was as a result of the people I surrounded myself with and the friends that I kept. Rather than being close to family, which became increasingly detrimental, I realized being away from them was what could have saved my life, and in fact did save my life. So I think that my, you know, sangat is everything. Like who you surround yourself is so important. And I think that I've somehow always been this supreme weirdo that was around artists and the maker community of the city. And as a result of that, I was exposed to what, you know, was a part of the fabric of the cultural economy, you know, in Ontario. And that it has saved my life. And I genuinely believe that to be the case. And I think on top of that, just turning this back to the Indigenous culture and indigeneity in general, I feel very passionate about the 7th generation principle. So if you think about yourself as, you know, kind of just like a pretty small fabric of a larger thing, and you really recognize that your role and what you do and the decisions you make today could impact the life of 7 generations down the line, suddenly you're holding yourself accountable to something quite larger than yourself. And I think that when you think about that in the context of arts culture and how you want to work on yourself, those are some like pretty strong accountability partners that keeps you fascinated, curious, but also playful and, you know, wanting to live a life of meaning and substance. So I think as a woman, there's been so many parallels between like what I was running away from, what I was running towards, and not really having a holding ground where I could just simply exist. And I think men have not only a responsibility for themselves and their well-being, but also recognize that women have to straddle these like really incredibly difficult and precarious roles and expectations and are still just trying to figure it out for themselves. So I think that's kind of where I value the arts and culture, but also where I value space making and, you know, this kind of empathy towards one another across gender, across sex, and all of the other things. So sorry, long-winded way to really deliver a message for my girls out there.
Can I just step in for a second? Sorry, because I wanted to just talk about this really briefly, especially what Raji mentioned as well. When it comes to patriarchy and the things that we were taught in Bollywood, and honestly, like some of the movies that I used to love when I was a kid, I can't watch that shit anymore. Excuse my language, because I'm just like, how the hell did I enjoy watching this garbage? Because when you get older and start to look at the things, and I go, okay, so I have 2 boys. And I go by a saying where it's the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow. And when you look at such things, especially that's happening in India, we all know about the whole rape, like, you know, the whole talks about rape that happens in India and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you look at Bollywood, I'm not saying Bollywood is a culprit. I don't know, maybe it is. Who am I to say? I'm not from India. But at the same time, if you were to watch a Bollywood movie of you know, like, let's just say that even the hero, the so-called hero in Bollywood, how does the hero strike a conversation with the heroine? You follow her, you bother her, you keep following her until she says yes. I have a problem with that. That's not the right way to approach any woman and to think that it's acceptable. if anybody wants a little bit of a comic relief, I actually watch. I'm all about like looking back at regressive Bollywood trash, and but also looking at the messages that are portrayed and how it's taught upon the youth within Bollywood trash altogether. There's a vlog that I watch. It's called Tried and Refused, and they talk about a lot of regressiveness that happened back in the day. And the funny thing is that a lot of regressiveness happened with some of the most some of the classic films, like some of the best films that came out back in the day in the black and white era, where they had some of the most regressive scenes. And these were things that I would say comes down to maybe some patriarchy that happens. Like, such scenes where a lady is shopping and she's getting harassed by somebody, then the hero comes in, saves her, and then at the end of that, the hero has to lecture her about, why are you wearing a sleeveless top? It was called upon. So just stuff like that is just, you live in India. It's hot climate. You can't wear a sleeveless top. Like, it drives me crazy when these type of messages are portrayed within Bollywood. And these are films that came out in 2005. So it's actually recent. So anyways, I've spoken.
No, they impact young people today. I just, as you were speaking, Bobby, I was thinking of a couple of years ago here in the local community in Brampton. This was a huge problem actually amongst South Asian young men, and the way that they were approaching young women, and some of their dating behavior and so on. So I think the type of films, the kind of the behavior that's is Bobby frozen? Yeah, what we see in the media, what we see in film has a huge part to play in almost like the roadmap that people then follow. I don't know if anybody else has anything to share.
Yeah, I'm part of that problem.
You're all still here. I got a bit worried there for a second.
Oh, what? Can you see us? Can you see us? I had my hand up, but like I was wondering if you could see me with my hand up. Okay.
Yeah. Go
ahead.
No, Jazz, go. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna comment on what Bobby said about Bollywood. Well, I've been in that industry of making music videos for 15, 20 years. But remember, I'm a Canadian, not I wasn't a South Asian Canadian. I was just a Canadian, my preppy white friends, and I went to film school. And the little company, they go, hey, we know there's a South Asian filmmaker making hip hop videos. Let's go knock on his door. And I go, hi, how are you? And they go, we want you to make music videos for us. I go, well, I don't know the culture. I don't know the artist. I don't speak Punjabi and none of that. So I got in and I just used my sensibilities of making music videos, hip hop. And the next thing I know that I'm working with all of them, right? I'm working with everybody. And the one thing that they always wanted me to do was to copy the Bollywood thing, about the guy and the girl, the hero and the thing. And I made it very clear that with all the sex and violence in Bollywood, even in music videos, because my career was that, I said one thing, I had the line, I go, whatever you say, if my mother cannot watch the video without her slapping me, I cannot make the video. So I go, I will not cross boundaries, and you guys will not be dating the models. So get that clear that you will not be dating. So it is a terrible industry when it comes to how they treat women. And I made sure that I made my music videos very, very different, stylized. I go, I'm going to be a filmmaker, so I'm going to use this as an avenue to break. And people didn't understand what I was doing. And I go, you know what, I don't care. I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do the TNA thing. And I'm going to, respect the woman. And I am still friends with every model that I've worked with for 30 years. They are still my friends. So I've never burnt a bridge. And yeah, Bollywood, fantasy. Might as well watch Star Wars, That's horrible, Watch Bandit Queen. Watch Bandit Queen. That's India.
Yeah, and also just to kind of add to that is that so jazz, it just seems as if like when correct me if I'm wrong because I'm yet to look at your work, even though we've met for the first time, but from the way how you depict film, it seems as if like the way how you portray film is more honest, more real, especially when you brought up the whole, as you mentioned that you can't always show your films at a family event, but you kind of get a little more realistic. Would that be the
I
case?
know
Or
I hit below the belt. Like my first feature film. Okay, so my first short film dealt with I think it was schizophrenia. Like I don't talk about it, but there was a
yeah,
duality in this character, and I won awards for this first short film. And people
yeah,
said, "Well, Jazz, you're good at this Hitchcock style suspense thing." I go, "Okay." So I ran with it. My next film, Jyoti, the gang rape victim, Delhi, 2012. That rocked my world. I go, I cannot be a part of these people. I cannot walk down the streets and say that I'm proud to be South Asian. So I did a film called Madame Kali, where Kali Ma, the god of death and destruction, comes down and destroys this pure evil rapist man. And I did this in my film. It cost me probably the most I've ever spent to get Kali Ma. I go, how are we going to teach these men a lesson? And I go, the only way is to bring Kali Ma, if you know Kali Ma, right? Bring her down. It's a 3-minute short film. I got so many views that Pink, a group called Pink, Global TV, and all these people there, they say, oh, you're a man. How come you're a man making a film about this? I'm going, I don't understand why that's a conversation. I go, why is that a conversation? This is wrong. And we got to teach something. And all I can do is show my pain, show how I feel about this, and don't hold back, right? Now, here's
yeah.
the funny thing. A lot of men can't watch my film, especially the ones in India, because, they're religious, they're traditional, and they know Kalima is real. They could not watch my film. But every woman, including my mother, when she comes down and everyone's like this, am I blurry?
It's okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. But everyone that saw my little short film, they go, okay, finally, somebody's actually, on the right track. So I keep going. So I hide it. I talk about things, but I put it in a bigger genre thing so men can watch it without going, oh, Jazz, like, why are you shitting on us? Excuse my language.
That's okay. I'm
And
pretty
my
sure we're all
first feature
adults.
film that's
great
coming.
that you're able to use film in that way, in that kind of layered way.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
feature film that I just finished when I got back to Canada, it's called Tales of Sin. 5 short stories about sin against women. 5 stories about women, and they all deal with, one is honor killing, acid burning, one is like just domestic violence and all that, but it's all disguised in a good in an entertaining horror film. But if you're a South Asian woman, you'll go, Jazz, all right. I get direct messages from women saying, actresses and women saying, Jazz, have you done a story about a creepy uncle molesting you when somebody was young? I go, no. I go, but something we should deal with. So I get more response from women wanting to discuss. And I was like shocked that these are friends and colleagues and actors, and they're going, Jazz, I don't know what to do, but I saw your feature film because I gave her permission. And I go, okay. The second film I'm dealing with the hypocrisy of our culture, tradition, and everything. Just the hypocrisy of in a religion and how we preach and what we do behind closed doors. It's horrendous. And I've done that. Film is finished. I just got to finish editing it. It'll take another year.
Okay. So we'll have that at the festival next year then, hey?
Probably not, but yes. It's called, the title of the film is called, I forget it. But yes, so I'm so passionate about making sure that we got to change. I got a nephew and niece, and they're watching. And the next generation, the teenagers of now, are the ones that are going to make the change. We got to lay the groundwork and accept everything, and we got to just lay the groundwork. We're messed up. We're screwed. We can pass the message on. The next generation is not going to be doing what we're doing.
Okay. Karan, we haven't heard from you for a while. I just wondered if you had any thoughts.
Is that me? Sorry, I couldn't. My internet's
Yeah.
not unstable. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, was that me? Sorry.
Yeah. Just about
Yeah.
following on from Jazz, if there was anything that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's interesting listening to everyone speak right now, because when you talk about the hypocrisy of, not just religion, but our culture as well, talking about these from the perspective of film, it's so powerful, right? Like, I mean, Jazz has mentioned this a number of times already. Like, the ability to be able to translate the things that are, I was going to put quote unquote wrong, but the things that are wrong with our culture, and the things that go on, like Jazz said, behind closed doors, being able to depict those in a film, which fundamentally, it's the backbone of India, really. Bollywood is like the second, I'm sure it's like the second biggest film industry in the world or whatever. Having, the first number one, okay, there you go. Being able to depict these stories in front of an audience who is fundamentally responsible for all of these issues. Obviously, I'm generalizing here. It's such a powerful thing to be able to do that. And what you guys have said is you've hit the nail on the head. Like, you are putting these stories in front of people who need to see them. And it's so amazing that you can do that. And whether or not they're going to listen, this is a matter of progress, right? It's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to be a constant. And, again, I'm going to refer to Jazz here again, because it looks like it's your mission. Like, it's your mission to make sure that these things don't continue to happen. And we need to continue doing that. And as for myself, it's always been a thing. It's kind of almost been a mission statement. When I made films, it's always been to make films for people who don't have films being made about them. And what Jazz is doing, and a lot of other creatives, not just us, but within the festival, who are making these films for people who don't have representation, in a traditional sense. And these topics and issues that we are talking about right now are huge. And it's going to be mental when it just explodes even more. Like, yeah.
Cinema is so sanitized.
Yes.
Cinema, in the last couple of decades, is sanitized.
Yes.
Just like how we're washing our hands and wearing masks. Cinema, because COVID, the best thing that COVID did for me and my family, we watched movies. And between my brother and my sister-in-law, we rotated our films. So we got to watch what I wanted to watch. And because we had 6 months to watch our films. And it's shocking to see what PG was, since I remember what PG was in the 80s versus what PG is today. You might as well watch, Nickelodeon, because the films are so sanitized. Yep. And the thing is, I'm not about that, because when you sanitize, how are you going to get people to listen or change? So if I do sound a little passionate about this, is I don't care if anybody watches my films or not, but I'm going to get it out there, and the audience will find my film. And I remember got in trouble saying, I want to make a film about violence against, I want to cinematically take care of my issues without me going outside and, being, part of a parade or holding a stick. And making my films the way I feel makes my blood pressure goes up, and I go, I'm going to make a film about it. And I don't care how I deal with it. I want to represent the people that don't get representation. Right. I go, it was tough being a South Asian filmmaker in the 90s, because every female thought the casting couch is where they automatically knew these actors and models, casting couch. And there was a modeling agency here in Toronto that provided the casting couch. And I go, I can't believe that this Bollywood nonsense is happening in my backyard here. How do I change that? Well, one thing, respect the artist, the woman, give her control of what she wants to do on the project. And I am still friends with every single woman that I've ever worked with. And that I'm very proud of. It
almost sounds like film is a form of activism. It can be,
Yes.
Raji, I just want to flip to you for a second. And I'm also just, guys, very aware of the time. I feel like we could continue talking about
It's
these
fine.
topics for hours. Raji, how can we share these stories, thinking about representation and how South Asian stories are shared in the mainstream? I come back to kind of my experience as a mental health professional. How can I incorporate some of these things as learning tools? What role does film have there? And do you have any advice for us?
I remember when I was starting out in the arts, I started off as a curator, and then I went into working with board of directors of large institutions like the TIFFs and the AGOs and the ROMs. And from my experience, they don't want it. And I'm not trying to call out all of these institutions. I think there's a general curiosity of our audience, like our reach, like what South Asians are within Canada and what the importance of South Asians are to their businesses. But I found in my 5 years experience working at that level, most of the times I was brought into a discussion where inclusion and diversity in programming or in HR was discussed. It was like, oh, well, we can only do one Maharaja exhibit every 5 years. And I was like, all right, cool, why? Not a single answer to that question, and so I'm not saying we're barking up the wrong tree. It's not the case, but there is a lot of learning that needs to be done. I feel like we've been doing the work. All of you guys have been doing the work with the filmmaking and the creating of content and safe spaces like that Sapna does. But I feel like right now it's the institutions that need to do the work because they're the ones that are not serving us. And that has become a lot more valid because of what's happening in the racial uprising and the racial identity and war, so to speak. But I think as coming in from the mental health space, we actually sadly are doing the work, but when we go into an institution, whether it's TIFF or another hot docs or something, it's almost as if you have to be straddling it from a dual standpoint. So your first prong of attack is of education and saying, well, as a person of color, if you were to program my film into this, it meets X, Y, Z of your guidelines and the things that you're looking for. And guess what? There's about this many South Asians in the GTA that will come and watch this. Oh, you don't believe me? Look at these statistics of IFFSA or something like that. It's almost as if you have to educate and place make. And then the second is the work that the community has to do in itself to go and support the people that are of their community. And sometimes I feel like that is a place where we're not always actively pursuing our mandates. I think there's a lot of South Asian creators, and I'm so fortunate to know many of them that feel they get support externally and not from their own community. So I think it's like a two-pronged approach. If you're gonna go to an institution, bring all of this, bring a deck, bring your presentation, wear your fierce red suit, get it going on. And then it's like, okay, well, I've created this space for you guys. Y'all better freaking show up and support this. And I think it's sadly something, to Jazz's point, is we are creating those foundational points now, which requires us to be working 24 hours a day. But I think that it's only going to be us constantly knocking on the doors where finally they'll start to open them up. And I find in my professional experience, it's getting a little bit easier to just kind of step in and say, well, actually it's valid to host something on a semi-regular basis because South Asians want to consume culture and they will be loyal to that consumption if you're doing something that's meaningful for them. Yeah. Why should I, and this is my last bender, I feel like I'm going on my podium Raji speech, but I feel my answer to that particular executive director was, and you'll probably will know who it is. It's like one of our larger art galleries in Toronto. And they're like, okay, I want people like you. And I was like, okay, well, begin by not ever asking that damn question again. What does that mean? You want women? You want millennials? What, you want people of color? Or do you want South Asian? What are you asking? Or am I different than you? First of all, that was kind of what I was met with. And then second, when they said they can only program one Maharaja exhibit a year, they didn't have the answer to why. When I asked, why can't you do something that is reflecting me more regularly in your programming calendars consistently? And when they can't answer that, then that's the place where I think we have to, it's almost like we have to credentialize why that's a good business proposition. And that's always like the last bit of my Rolodex, is make the business case for it. So I think those would be the three. It's like the creating of the space through education, supporting community internally as well to show up when you built that space. And the third and final resort is that credentialization and saying, well, if you do this and you make this step, or you integrate a diverse board of directors to govern this institution that is serving the public but not representing the public, here's the data to show you why this is a good idea. And then I think that that's usually the way I kind of go about my plan of attack. But I'm like also like just kind of, you know, testing it out as I speak, because I'm always just trying to figure out what we can do to extend that table for one another. And I think we still got to learn that. I think that goes back to it's our generation's work. Some things are working, some things are not, and it just depends on a myriad of things.
Any advice for the next generation of BIPOC artists and filmmakers? A number of you touched on expectations from parents and so on with regards to profession and you know, where young people should be heading in terms of their career. Any advice there, Raji?
I think that seek your truth. You know, I think we could do anything we want, but if we don't know what our own truth is, our own internal compass is telling us to do, we're going to be doing all the things that are externally expected of us to do, which is only going to mess with our own sense of self and our own sense of impact and meaning in a real wholesome and potentially detrimental way. So I would say put in the work to figure out what your truth is. And if that means getting the help you need, like from mental health, is like from the mental health perspective, or getting the help you need because you're being violated sexually because you're a young woman in a patriarchal South Asian home, seek help, find your truth, and then express it. I mean, not all the time. I'm not saying be vulnerable all the time, but express it in the way that feels right to you. So if that means that you want to be an artist or a creator, and your truth is that you want to have a creative output of your self-expression, freaking do it, because we're here to support that. Like, that's our generation's work. And I often, after a talk or something like that, or a panel, like I'll get an influx of messages from young women usually, and they're just like, yo, I got this idea, I want to create art on a sneaker. And I'm like, yo honey, let's do it together, you know, like how can I help you? So I think it's like, yo, you find your truth, you put in the work, don't care about the likes, don't care about the external validation as much as we are growing a society to be caring about. And then once you figure that out, then yeah, express yourself and see what happens. But just don't care about what people are saying externally. I think that's a very important message for Sadi next beat, like our next generation. Yeah, I one of many, but that would be the biggest.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that a number of young people will really appreciate all of that advice that you've just given. Bobby, I had the same question for you actually, given who you bring together through Sapna, so young professionals. Any advice that you would have for youth that are looking to get into the arts?
Yeah, so in regards to youth and the advice to give to the youth altogether is that we need to work together. And I'm just speaking in terms of being Punjabi. And so I think that when, particularly South Asians, well, South Asians, particularly Punjabis, I feel that we can naturally be competitive. And I want to be very candid when I say that, is that we can naturally be competitive. So having said that, I think that it's important for us to, you know, open doors and come together as a community, and also thrive as a community by, you know, being part of these conversations and, you know, networking and, you know, sharing like-mindedness. And I think this might have been a challenge, you know, years ago, because it was really hard finding another person that was just like you from a professional standpoint. But the more conversation that we have, and the more doors that we can open for one another, and the more that we can, you know, give advice on how to thrive within your profession is really important. I'm pretty sure, like when Jazz was becoming a filmmaker, you know, like I'm guessing you like, was it difficult for you to find a mentor, you know, being a filmmaker?
There was, oh yeah, my mentor was from the movies that I grew up with. And then when I did find a mentor, he was Canadian, because there was nobody in Canada at that time, right? Sure, you know, sure we have the Deepa Metas and that, but no, yeah, mentors. Like, the thing is, that's the thing. We don't have those role models. We look at it from films, give us moral value and role models. Stupid phone. Yeah.
Because mentorship is really important as well. And I just think that, like, you know, when looking at my parents, and you know, they came here with a mindset where they had to do what's best for your children, but then they didn't really come here. Well, at least my parents didn't really come here with the mentorship. And you know, they got the help that they needed, but they weren't able to get the career advice for them to thrive. To this very day, I never knew what my dad always wanted to be. Maybe I should ask him. But you know, my dad, he came to Canada. He became a bus driver, and he was looking for side income projects for him to help his children. And I think this is really important. I think it's also, you know, when coming up, when being born here, it's I guess when you try to rebel and want to like be something that your parents do not want you to be, because it's your passion, that's really important to pursue. But as I gotten older, I then understood why parents became so protective of why, you know, hey, you know, you can do better than this. You can become a doctor, whatever it might be. And I think the reason why they're so protective is because they don't want to take a risk because they gave up so much. So they don't want you to take that risk. But then again, if you don't take that risk, you won't grow. So I'm a firm believer on, you know, these kind of things, on, you know, taking risks, but also making sure you find the right mentorship and the right people and being part of the right conversation. That's what's going to help you thrive as a community, and that's what's going to help the person thrive as a professional.
Karan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting listening to, again, I've said this before, but listening to these different perspectives, because I'm very fortunate that my parents were incredibly supportive of me wanting to make films and wanting to pursue this path. And even my sister, you know, she always said, just, you know what, just do what you want. Like, just don't worry about what anybody else says, and just make your stuff and just do what you want to do. And that was refreshing for me, because all the stories I'd ever heard, all my friends I'd ever spoken to, you know, not that there's anything wrong with any of this, you know, they'd followed the route of being an accountant or going into the medicine, or, you know, being a pilot and all this other stuff. And that's all I'd really known. And when I became of age where I wanted to choose what I wanted to do, and I said, I think I want to make films. And my dad was like, just do it. And I was like, that's awesome. It was so refreshing. And honestly, I don't know what else I would have done, to be honest with you. I think this is the more videos I make and the more stuff I do, and speaking to people like you guys, it just further drives home. I always remember the conversations I had with my parents, and my mom always said, like, can you make money from that? And then my dad always was the one to say, yeah, like, if he does it enough, like, he'll make money from it. But it was never about the money. Like, it wasn't, I don't know if it was, I don't know, I can't, it's difficult to explain, but maybe it was something in me that just wanted to express who I was, or what, I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to do it back then, but, you know, over time I started to realize why I love what I do, and why I love making films. And this conversation is testament of that. Is it allows us to talk about things that aren't being spoken about, you know, like, we can touch so many different people in different walks of life and experiencing different things. And yeah, like, my parents are definitely the catalyst of allowing me, I say allowing me, but, like, you know, being supportive of that passion, I guess. Yeah, no, it's to the youth, of today, you just kind of going on Instagram, and I'm sure you guys have seen this already, like just the amount of people and kids who are expressing themselves through TikToks and, you know, Instagrams and Twitter and everything else that exists now. You can see just the expression that they have, and it's like, you do your thing, man. Like, you express everything you want to express. These protests that happened and are still happening, the way that people are expressing themselves through video and through art and everything, to support the movement and everything is again, that makes me proud to be a creative, because it's like, shit, like this is awesome. Like, people are actually rising up with their art rather than, you know, Jazz mentioned holding a stick and walking out in the streets and marching. It's much more than that now. They're expressing themselves through creations, and that is huge. It's huge. And that, I mean, I said this at the beginning. I said, you know, film is one of the best ways we can communicate a message. And I'm excited to see what comes from the next generation of, you know, creatives and stuff, because shit, man, like, they're going to make so much awesome stuff. Like, especially, you know, the stuff that's happened, you know, with George Floyd and or all the protests, and, you know, that's going to be a catalyst. It's going to be a huge catalyst of a new batch of kids who just want to express themselves. Yeah, man, it's exciting.
Wonderful. I completely agree. Wow. Okay, guys, we have gone past our time.
I didn't even know what time. I didn't
I
even know
know.
we were supposed to do this.
We've been on a real journey together. I feel we've gone from talking about lived experiences, the films that you've made and contributed to over the years. We've talked about patriarchy, misogyny, machismo, all of the kind of the range of mental health issues that exist within the South Asian community, the stigma, the discrimination within our family units, within our social circles, what has been helpful in recovery, what hasn't been so helpful, and the role of art, the transformative power of art and film and creating, and how that can bring a sense of belonging to others, and how the messages can resonate with others. From my heart to all of yours, thank you so much. This is just the most richest conversation I think I've been a part of for a long time. I thank you for your vulnerability, and for sharing so openly with us. Any final words from you before we close today?
Jazz, you go.
When's our next session, our therapy session?
Felt a bit like that. Yeah, I have to say, there was a point where I wish I was on the panel and not the person asking the question.
I just want to add, like, I just heard some comments from everybody. I just want to just say that me coming to grips about film and my new life, I realized that you must ask the question why. If you want to be a filmmaker or even life dealing with our culture, ask why. And my nephew and niece ask so much why. If I don't have an answer, I can't help them, right? And then we must explore that. So why are women treated differently from men? Why are you doing this? Why is that, right? The why is so important for us to embrace. And also the honesty. Like, I don't have a filter anymore. So it's so terrifying. I had to speak to my sister and I go, I don't have a filter. She goes, well, you've been on this journey about coming honest and true about it, and you're just going to have to go with it. Just watch the F-bombs, right? And the lies. You know, if you can combat the lies, the why will combat the lies. And art, if you look back at the history of cinema, the cinema tells you the truth, not the history books, because you could see how men and women and social interaction between like the 80s, the 90s, the Bollywood cinema from the 70s and onward, it tells you a truth, might be in between. but it's clearer than that blurriness that I am right now.
I agree 100%. And also I just wanted to add, thank you, Gursharan, for creating this and putting this panel together. I think the work you're doing is incredible, and, you know, however we can help, like, let us know, because, you know, it begins with that mental health and well-being.
100%.